Okay, welcome. It is Friday, and this week we have been working on full steam ahead. So, Monday we learned that S was for
Science,
science. Tuesday we talked about T being for
technology,
technology. Wednesday we talked about E being for
engineering,
engineering. Yesterday we discussed the A, which was
art,
art. So, today we are on to the M, which stands
math,
for math. Very correct. So, what is the M in STEAM for? It is for math. Okay, so the M is for math. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little video about why math matters. Get it all pulled up. Okay, here's a little video on why math matters.
Have you ever dreamed about becoming a doctor, firefighter, a veterinarian, a police officer, a scientist, an engineer, an artist, an astronaut, a pilot, a teacher, or a lawyer when you grow up? But sometimes you wonder, why do I have to learn math at school? If so, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Miss Merlu, and this is Mathematicians in Action. The purpose of learning math is not just to pass a test to move to the next grade level. For sure, it's not to make your day harder or boring at school. The reality is that math is essential to understanding the world around us, and we need math to successfully accomplish even the most basic tasks in our everyday life. And did you know that most professions use math to successfully accomplish their job? For example, numbers provide an abundance of information for medical professionals like doctors, nurses, and veterinarians. They're constantly using math to write prescriptions or to administer the right amount of medication. Police officers also use math in many ways. A few examples are when they have to analyze traffic accidents to determine the cause of the accident and the cause of victims' injuries. They also need math to write tickets. For example, in some places, the faster a person drives, the more the ticket will be if they get caught. And this is determined by using a mathematical formula. Another example are firefighters. They use math to calculate the nozzle pressure and how much water they will need to put out the fire. Scientists are always using math. Any other science like biology, chemistry, psychology, geology, and physics relies on graph, statistics, and mathematical calculations. Hi, did you also know that pilots and astronauts are constantly solving mathematical equations to pilot the craft? And these are just a few examples. The truth is that learning and practicing math train our brains to think logically, to recognize patterns, to identify and state a problem clearly, and to find ways to solve the problem. I know, learning math can be challenging sometimes, but remember, it gets easier with practice and a positive attitude. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave.
So, that is why math can be so important, because you use it for just about any job you could ever think of. So, now we will go into our lovely PowerPoint. So, we said the M in STEAM is for math. So, let's talk about math. Okay, so what is math? Math is the overall study of numbers, shapes, and relationships. Okay, so next we're going to talk about how you can use math in certain areas how you can use it in just about everyday life. So how do you think you can use math when you're in the kitchen?
If you have like if you have like multiple different packages, then you have to like think. You have to add and add and add to depend on how much you have.
Yep, you have to add, you have to do measurements. If you think like for my family, I had me, my mom, my dad, and I had 2 brothers. Well, now I don't live with my mom and dad anymore. My middle brother doesn't live with my mom and dad anymore. And my youngest brother is away at school most of the year, so he doesn't live with my mom and dad. So my mom has to figure out how to cut her recipes from making enough for 5 people, cutting them down to just make enough for 2 people. So sometimes you even have to figure out how to change your recipes after time goes on. Like if you're used to making them for a big group and then all of a sudden you don't have that big group anymore, you have to make it smaller. Or even you can do the opposite, where if you're used to making it for 1 or 2 people and all of a sudden you have this big event or party, or even your family grows, you have to learn to make it for more people. So every ingredient in the kitchen has to be measured, and sometimes you need to multiply or divide to get the exact amount you need. Whatever you do in the kitchen requires math. Even just using the stove is a basic math skill in action. Okay. Did you know you have to use math in gardening? Why would you think you'd have to use math in gardening if you're gardening something?
Because like you have to like measure out all the. Because you have to like measure out like all the seeds and everything.
Yeah. So if you need to plant or sow new seeds or seedlings, you need to make a row or count them out or even make holes. So even without thinking, you are doing math. You're using your measuring skills and your calculations when you need to do something new in the garden. Okay? How would you use I'm supposed to say it other way. How would you use math when you're doing art? Think about it. How could you use math when you're working on something in art? Any ideas how you could use math in art? Okay. Well, here we go. Whether you're a sculptor or a painter, a dancer, or even just doing a collage for fun, you need to be able to measure, count, and apply basic math to it. Every form of art is codependent upon math skills. So you got to use math when you're doing stuff in art. Because if you think about it, what if you don't have the color purple, but you wanted to have the color purple? You'd have to know how much of what 2 colors. Do you guys know what 2 colors you have to mix to make purple?
Red and blue.
Red and blue. So you need to know how much red and blue together you need to make purple, right? Same goes for if you want to have green. You need to know how much yellow and blue, right? Yeah, you need to make green, okay? And math also can help with keeping track of your schedule. How can math help you keep track of your schedule? Do you guys know?
Because you have to like count down. Because like sometimes you have to like count down to how many days you have until like one special thing happens.
Yep. It can also help, like, if you think about it, if you have like appointments and you have multiple appointments in a day and you know, oh, this appointment will take this long, or even if you're like when you're an older like college student or so and you have certain classes and you're like, oh, I have this class at this time and I have this that starts at this time and my class should be over, so I'll have like 10 minutes to get from here to there. So making appointments and having a time schedule that works for you requires math. Now, how do you think you could use math when you're planning a trip? Think, if you're going to go on a big family vacation, you're going to go on a trip somewhere, how could you use math to plan that?
Like how much money like the plane costs to get there and stuff. The hotel and stuff, yeah.
Okay. So every outing you plan needs your math skills. Whether you're going to the beach or the zoo, it's irrelevant. You will plan your way there. So you have to plan how you're going to get there, which uses math. And you will have to use your time wisely. So say you are going to the zoo, but you're only going to the zoo for 3 hours, but everybody wants to see one specific thing at the zoo. You have to plan out, okay, we have this much time and we want to see this many things. So we got to make sure everybody gets a chance before we have to leave. So you have to use your time wisely, and math can also guide you and assist you on how to get there and help you get back. So it can help you if you have to use a map or even using GPS, it tells you what time you'll get there and all that fun stuff. And then when you're driving, you need fuel and your car needs oil and all that stuff. Otherwise, your car would break down. So you have to have math to make sure you know you have enough gas to get to your destination. And then you especially need math when you deal with your finances. Do you guys know what finances are? That big word? Anybody?
Basically like your money.
Yep, it is your money. So why do you think you need to need math to deal with your money?
To check to see if you have like enough money to like buy a certain item.
Or to pay off like debt and all that.
Yeah.
Yep, you always have to make sure you are using math when you're checking your finances. Even if you have say you have a piggy bank jar at home and you keep track of how much money you kind of put in there on occasion. I know I have my own little piggy bank here at my house, and I try and keep track of when I put money in it. I don't know exactly how much money is in my piggy bank, but I know a rough estimate of how much is in there because I try and keep track every time I put some change in there just so I know how much I have. So counting how much change you have or even how many dollar bills you have, it all has to deal with math. And just like you guys said, even if you're paying off a loan or that kind of stuff, you always need to know your finances so you know how much money you have if you want to buy a certain item, or even if you just, maybe you like to save your money and you just want to know how much money you have if something came up and you needed to buy something. So I want you guys to think, how do you specifically use math in your everyday life?
Check to see how many hours are left before I have to go to bed.
Okay. There's nothing else after this, so.
Like on how I spend, or like how long I do my stuff, and like what else I would like to do the rest of the day. So I have to end like whatever I'm doing at a certain amount of time so that I can do whatever I want the rest of the day.
Okay. Anybody else? How do you use math throughout your everyday life?
To count my money.
To count your money? Anybody else use math every day? I know for me, I probably use math a lot more than you guys, but for me, every day, I calculate how many hours I'm at work so that I know kind of when I went to work and when I got off, just to keep track of how much I'll get paid from work. And I'm always counting at work to make sure I have, because most of you guys, I think I've told you, I work in a daycare. So I'm always counting to make sure I have all the kids that I'm supposed to have in my classroom every time we go somewhere, just so that, little ones, they like to sneak away sometimes. And I do a lot of cooking. Since I live by myself, I cook in my own kitchen. So I have to use math for that. So really, you can't get away from math. Think of, if you know what you think you want to be when you are older, tell me what it is and tell me if you think that requires math.
Firefighter.
You want to be a firefighter? Do you think that requires math?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
A teacher, which definitely requires math.
Yes, it does.
I want to be a zookeeper.
Maybe a zookeeper?
I want to be an orthopedic surgeon. That takes a lot of math.
A lot of math. Do you think being a zookeeper will have to deal with a lot of math? Yeah, you got to know how much to feed those animals, and you got to keep them on a schedule of when to feed them.
Remember, there's college too, and you have to think of that because you have to do all those classes and everything.
Oh yeah, you got to go to school still and get your degree to do that. Oh, I know. You use math in your everyday life. So anytime you say you won't use math, you are definitely probably wrong. And if you struggle in math, there are all those fun math games. I know a lot when I work at the after-school program at JCAC, a lot of the kids like to play on that cool math games. I don't know if they're all math games, but
Hardly any of them are math.
Hmm?
Hardly any of the games are math,
Oh.
to be honest.
Yeah, none of the games are math.
It's just called cool math games. But there are plenty of other sites to get in some cool math, to get in some math games. But another question for you guys, though. Do you have to use math if you play board games? If you play board games with your family, do you have to use math?
Yes. With money and everything, because if you want, so for example, in Monopoly, if you want to buy this property, you have to spend a certain amount of money, and you want to make sure that you still have a little bit of extra so you can keep on, you know?
Yep.
Like the game of life.
Oh, yeah. In the game of life, you got to keep track of your money and how much you're spending in the game of life, too, when you're buying properties and all that fun stuff. And you also, if you're playing a game that has dice and there's 2 dice and you have to move, you have to count how many times you got to move.
And
No,
also,
I was-
you have to, like, add up and everything.
Yep, and if you're playing Yahtzee, you got to add all that up. I know as a kid, I didn't like to count, so I would just go, if I'd roll a 4 and a 3, I'd go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I'll move 3 more. Now I count. Makes it easier. But, so, next week, anybody look ahead? Anybody know what we're discussing next week? Well, next week it's going to be all about nature, so I'll let you guys ponder that. While we think about that for next week, it's going to be all about nature. But we are going to do our little review. So, here's the deal. We're going to talk about it, and I want you to tell me one thing you remember from, if you remember anything from that day. You ready? So, on Monday, we talked about the S, which stood for?
Science.
Science.
Okay, do you remember anything we talked about with science on Monday? No?
Neither me or him were here. 'Cause they have textbook. I were just-
Okay, we talked about cool science experiments you can do in STEAM. Okay, Tuesday we talked about the T, which is
Technology.
technology. And what, do you guys remember anything we did on Tuesday with technology?
The bridges. I remember. Wait, was that? No, that was engineering.
That was engineering. You're right. You remember something from engineering. On Tuesday, remember I showed you guys all those pictures and asked if you knew what all the fun stuff I
yeah.
showed you images were. You knew most of them. You guys were pretty good. I was surprised. Okay, then on Wednesday, we learned about the E, which was engineering. And we talked about bridges and the 3 main.
Engineering uses math.
Yes, engineering does use math. So does science. Technology, I think there's some math and technology
All of them
still.
fit in the same thing.
Yeah, they all fit together. That's why they work so well together. And then we talked yesterday about the A, which stood for
Art.
art. Do you guys remember anything we talked about yesterday?
Did we do it yesterday? Do what? Art?
I don't remember if you two were here yesterday.
I don't think we.
But so yesterday we talked about art, and I told you that originally when STEM first came out, there was no A. There was no art. They came out as STEM.
I swear, it used to be called STEM when I was there,
Yep.
wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I
It used to be called STEM, and then they added the A. Okay,
Yeah.
and then today we discussed the M finally, which stood for
Math.
math.
Yeah, so
And you guys use math in your everyday lives, whether you realize it or not. You are usually using math. So I know I think they sent some papers home for you guys, and you're supposed to make a
and those
picture.
two new supplies I think that we're supposed to pick up today.
Oh yeah, and you're supposed to go pick up your supplies for next week.
Yeah.
So, yep, like I said, next week it'll be all about nature, so we'll be learning lots of fun nature type things. But that is about all I have for you guys this afternoon. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope to see all of you guys on Monday. Bye.
Bye.